So thank you for joining us here today. It's my pleasure now to introduce back up to the stage Jacob Clemente, Senior Reporter for Charter.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be back on stage to interview Amjad Masad, the CEO of Replit. How many people here are familiar with Replit? Raise your hand. Okay, for those who are not, it is a vibe coding platform that helps users turn their ideas into working applications by just describing what they want in plain English. Thank you for joining us, Amjad.
Of course, my pleasure.
So the topic of this conversation is how are AI agents changing work? And there's been so much hype, so much excitement about agents that has only grown over the past maybe month and a half, 2 months at this point. So I kind of want you to start off by level setting for us. What are agents capable of doing at work today?
So what are agents to start with? I think the term is sort of a little bit overused. Not every chatbot is an agent. An agent, I think you can give it a piece of work and it can work iteratively, call tools, connect to the internet, do actions on your behalf, and then halt when it feels or when the job is complete or when it fails, right? So the idea of like being able to run indefinitely or until the work is done, I think is important for agents. And so experiments around agents, I think started in like maybe 22 with the advent of GPT-3 and 3.5. We started getting early on, a lot of us tinkers, before kind of it became widespread, we started thinking about, okay, how do you put these LLMs in a loop and see if they can do more interesting things? The problem is they would stay coherent for like a minute or two, and they would totally go off the rails. They would start speaking Chinese and mixing languages and do things like that. And then I think that continued to get better, just very incrementally. It wasn't until the current paradigm of reinforcement learning, which happened around when ChatGPT introduced O3. And the idea is that these models are now trained sort of like a human's trained on the job, where they get feedback from the environment. You situate a model inside a coding environment, you let it write code, and then it gets a reward if it wrote the right code that passed the test. And if it didn't, it will get docked, right? And that iterative process will train the neural network to be better at staying coherent and do work long term. And so I would say we reached kind of the first inflection point in 2024 with Claude 3.5. I think that was the first sort of model that can stay coherent for 2 or 3 minutes. And we introduced Replit. On top of that, in September 2024, we introduced Replit Agent version 1. And that was the first time vibe coding actually was created. It wasn't called vibe coding at that time. We just called it agentic software creation platform. And it was, for the first time, you can type a natural language prompt, and the agent can write the code, provision a database for you, run the code, and then get the error logs and perhaps fix some of the errors. But again, oftentimes the problem with it is how coherent it was. I think the big jump in how long these agents could work really happened around November, December 2025, where you could see them work for hours at a time, and that unlocked amazing new progress, including what we've seen with ClaudeBot or OpenClaw and so on.
The examples you gave were just all around coding, and that seems like where most of the progress has been so far in these tools for Replit, Lovable, et cetera. What about areas outside of engineering? What kind of progress are we seeing for agents for work?
So in these reinforcement learning environments, the type of training that is happening benefits from what's called ground truth, whether the task we can verify that the task is done. Coding is deterministic. We can say that this task is done, and therefore models are getting really good at coding. You can't do it in poetry. It's really hard to find ground truth, whether this poem is good or not. It's not as hard as poetry, but still hard to do it in legal, and so on. So the more concrete, the more deterministic and discrete the subject matter is, the better the agents get at it. And that's why we've seen amazing progress in coding. Now, the thing about it is, well, it turns out, and we've been saying it for a long time, is coding has bearing not just on creating software, it actually can interact with the world in many ways, right? So you can, to do an Excel sheet really well, you can write a piece of Python software that populates the fields in an Excel sheet. So now coding models can do Excel. To write a PowerPoint, you can actually just write HTML code and render it. And so Replit actually does really great presentation. The other day, we introduced Replit animations. And if you asked me 10 years ago whether we're going to get into animations, I'm like, why would we do that? But we now have videos, so if you want to launch a marketing video for your product, you can just tell, you built a product with Replit, you can tell Replit, hey, do a marketing video for this launch, and we'll just do something that's really nice that, when I was an entrepreneur like 10 years ago, I would pay $10,000, $20,000 for a video like that. And that's code. And so, obviously workflows can be encoded in code. A lot of what we do in front of the computer can be encoded in code. Anything that can be called into an API. So code, the utility of code is a lot larger than software, and I think it's going to have a bigger impact on other jobs. So yes, the AI companies are working on automating other things, but even if they didn't, AI coding is a big deal.
Can you give us a couple of examples inside Replit? Obviously, you have the Replit agent, but you're using other products as well inside, of a function outside of engineering, like using agents to help them with their work?
Yeah, so our philosophy at Replit, when you hear about from a lot of other AI CEOs, they talk about AGI and automating work and automating people. Our approach has always been putting humans in the middle. We think that a lot of what we do in front of the computer can be routine, soul-crushing type of work. And so how can we get back to being creative? The type of feeling that I feel when I was a kid, when I was building applications, when you see something come to life and you see other people using it, it's just like an amazing feeling. And I always wanted for other people to experience it. So the way we design our application is that anyone can use it. So for example, yesterday, I've mentioned the story in HR before, but actually yesterday, someone at the office I was talking to, she works in deal desk. So any B2B company, when the deals come through, when the salespeople are talking to customers, they go to the deal desk people and create a quote, right? A PDF file that they can send with the pricing and all of that. Typically, at our scale, we would need 5 people in deal desk at the scale of revenue that we have today. But we hired one person, she never coded before, and she built a deal desk application and agentic workflow that made it so that she's hyper productive. So when a rep goes and want to enter a new deal, they will enter it into that system. It helps them configure the entire thing, so they don't even need to talk to her. And then once that's done, she actually has an LLM score that. And then it sends it in Slack and says, okay, this deal is approved, you can send it. And if they have feedback on it, they can tag the agent and tell it, here's my feedback on it. She built this entire workflow on her own. I think we can double our revenue again without hiring any more deal desk people. And she's having, the more important part, she's having a blast. And she's enormously more valuable for us because she built this.
You mentioned at another point you maybe would have had to have 5 people for that, but now you have 1. When you spoke to my colleague, Kevin Delaney, earlier this year, you said that when Replit reached 150 million in annual recurring revenue, you had just 70 people. Mm-hmm. But a SaaS company maybe 10 years ago would have had maybe 700 people to get there. At this point, how do you decide whether you need to hire a new person or not versus just try to automate the process or whatever you're trying to get done?
We're actually hiring as many people as we can, as fast as we can in many areas of the business. But we try to look for people who can be 10x more productive. And I think that's harder, and that creates a natural limit on the kind of how many people we hire. So it is not that we're like artificially constraining the kind of roles that we need. We're actually kind of conspicuous in how much we hire. But if we're setting the bar high in terms of their ability to use AI, their ability to be a lot more productive. And I think that's true of a lot of our customers as well. We have a lot of SMBs in addition to enterprises using Replit. And the SMBs tell us that, when we started using Replit, we actually started hiring more people. Actually, there's a gentleman here that works in HR at high level that was telling me he built like this ATS in Replit for executive recruiting, and I asked him this question: is like, oh, did that mean that you need less people? He said the same thing. It was like, no, we're actually hiring more people, but we want to hire more people that know how to use Replit and all these tools. And so I think it becomes more of a skills question, and that is the constraint on how many people you want to hire.
To this question of hiring, I'd love to talk a little bit about the types of people you want to hire. This thing you talked about with Kevin a few months ago, you have this vision for the future of work where jobs are less specialized. Roles are a little bit more generalist, and you're seeing this a little bit inside Replit, your product team. You've talked about this before, that you have developers, product managers, and engineers, often all the same person. Yeah. One person, all three of those roles. Can you talk a little bit about this move toward more generalist roles, less specialist roles, and how you see that playing out at your company?
Yeah. So I think with the sort of industrial revolution, we had an economy that was semi-automated. Wasn't fully automated. So humans had to hyper-specialize and take almost the role of the machine in order to make the systems work, to make the factories work. We couldn't have full robotic automation, so you had to sit on a factory line and do this one thing and do it repetitively in a machine-like sort of way. And then we created an education system to create more people like that, and I think our education system is really structured around creating people that are very conformist, that can like focus their attention for a long time on a routine task, and then now we're heading into this information age where we have computers and the internet, and now we have agents that can do a lot of things on our behalf. So what becomes special about humans? Like, what does it mean to be human? I fundamentally believe that it is consciousness, and I think creativity flows from consciousness. And if you agree with that, then the most important thing is to be generative and to be a great problem solver. And so my product manager, actually when we launched this new marketing stack, this new animation stack, it was an idea that was started by a product manager on the team. He did the product management for it, but he also used the tool to create a marketing video for the launch for the tool. Right, and so you had a product manager, a designer, a developer, and a marketer in one person. Mm-hmm. So I think this is really the future of work, and it's exciting. And if you can imagine, it's hard to imagine, but you can imagine companies, especially smaller companies, and maybe we do not need a lot more kind of really large companies, where people wake up every day, and instead of thinking, oh, I'm going to do this exact task repeated a million times, it's like, what can I do today to advance the business? How can I serve the customers better?
Yeah. You are building a product that essentially seeks to make everyone a software engineer in a way, right? Anyone could build an app, a website that kind of suits their needs. To this idea of, we're moving towards a world where people are a little bit more generalist, less specialist, stuck in whatever lane they've been in. What do you think is the future role of like a software engineer, which is a fairly specialized role in that world?
Yeah, I think, look, I think that it's sort of like as the technology moves, there are specialists today that are still very valuable and will continue to be for like a few years, but eventually you could see AI models just getting better at every aspect of engineering. For example, like right now, things that are have more tacit knowledge, like site reliability, SRE, or DevOps, right? It's not really sitting down and coding. Their material is not all on GitHub and Stack Overflow, so AI models are not very good at that. So specialization in systems people that are keeping the systems online will continue to be important, I think, for the next 2 years. But eventually, this technology will come to every hyper-specialized technical field. And so I think in the fullness of time, I do think that software engineering as a role sort of disappears. And what you have is generalist product people, problem solvers, or systems people.
Do you still think that in order to get the best out of these systems 5, 10 years from now, you will have to have some type of technical knowledge, some type of technical background, even if it means not coding itself?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where you're sitting in the stack. If you're someone who is responsible for keeping the systems online, I think you need to, when things go down in a catastrophic way, like when it happens at AWS or the big clouds, you need people to actually get down to brass tacks and actually figure it out. And I think we'd want to maintain that knowledge, because I think it gives me a lot of anxiety to live in a world where we do not understand the underlying systems. I think we should still retain that muscle. And actually, if you look at human history, there's been many instances where we've forgotten completely how to do something. So like the pyramids is an example. We're still trying to figure out how we actually did that. And so there's an aspect where I think humans would still choose to retain that knowledge despite perhaps not needing it quite. And also there's regulations and things like that. So I think there are some special jobs that will continue to be protected in that way.
Yeah, you've said before in an interview, I think, if we're going to send someone to the moon, I don't want it to be on a vibe-coded computer. As like your classic example of like maybe a safety-focused example there.
Yes. Yeah, like, famously, I forgot her name, but the woman who programmed the Apollo mission, she was programming in as low level as like machine code as possible, because they don't want to introduce any memory issues. Or the higher level you go, the more likely the errors that you're gonna incur, the less grasp on the systems that you have. So I think we still want people to be closer to systems.
This kind of vision that you've laid out of the future of work, where people are kind of deciding what problems they work on, and the AI is kind of doing more of the execution parts. We're starting to see that play out in some roles, mainly in engineering and tech companies today, where a lot of engineers at some of the AI labs say, I don't write any of my code anymore, right? I'm managing teams of agents that are writing the code, and then I'm delegating that work, and I'm kind of evaluating what they give me. That kind of looks like what a manager does today. So what do you see as the role of a manager in the future?
Well, I think it's not just software. So we do a release almost every 6 months. So Agent 4 is coming in March. And Agent 4 will have a design agent, we'll have a production agent, we'll have a marketing agent, we'll have like a team of agents working on your behalf. And we're like really taking to heart this idea of like being as general as possible. We want to see entrepreneurs being able to like launch their entire business and manage all their agents right from Replit. And we're gonna have this like really great interface with a canvas in a lot more creative way in order to right now, like with things like Claude Code, you're like in the terminal and you have this text and you're typing like it's the 1970s. Like what is the actual like Iron Man interface for? We're trying to discover that. And I think management is not going to be this like boring old thing. It's going to be fun, creative exercises. The interfaces should look exciting and creative. Now, the role of the manager, I think, becomes more like a coach. And I think that's the most valuable job of a manager. Like I remember when I had a manager, my favorite manager was when I worked at Facebook, and he just made me feel good. He just made me feel motivated. And that was the best manager I've had. Like I've never got a lot of value from them micromanaging my technical work, because I was better than them at coding. So I think it becomes more important to understand true people issues, human emotions, what people are going through, guiding them through tough interpersonal situations. I think that takes a front row seat in the future.
Is that something we're going to add to all the job descriptions in the future? Make your employees feel good will be the job description for managers.
Yeah, make them feel good and excited and be healthy. Perhaps even like ask them about their diet and how they're sleeping.
Yeah. We've talked about the future of software engineering, what it's going to mean to have the value of technical skills over the next few years. We talked about the future of these jobs becoming a little bit broader, a little bit less specialist over time. You have kids right now. I'm curious what you hope they study in college.
Yeah, it's so hard. I don't know if anyone figured it out. But I really think the education system needs to be overhauled. There are a lot of interesting ideas. When Elon started that school in SpaceX, I actually went and visited it because they were using Replit many years ago. And there was a teacher there that was very innovative, and he was trying to think about what is the future of education. And one thing they were doing, and it actually turned into software called Synthesis that you can have your kids sign up for. But basically, they learn through simulations. So there are no grades, there are no classes, and everything is project-based, and everything is based on simulations. So they go into these environment. Either they build an environment themselves, they code them, or they go in these simulated environment, they do problem solving with other kids. And throughout that, some of the problems they have to solve are math problems, physics problems, civilization or society, war game style problems. And I think maybe that hints at where the future is headed. One thing, my kids are very young, so one thing I am trying to, my hypothesis about our education system is that humans are actually born very creative and very free, and we actually beat that out of them. So I'm trying not to beat that out of them. And one way to do that is to, we send them to Montessori schools and things like that. But also when I sit down with them, we do a lot of AI, and I try to get them to be very generative. So we sit in front of Replit, we build a game, ask them what would you like to see in the game, and they start coming up with ideas, and they learn what a bug is, and they learn when the agent messes up, and they get to sort of interact with how agents work.
Kind of summarizing what you just said, so the simulation-focused education seems like that's kind of focusing on decision-making, throwing people into different scenarios, seeing how they react. And the last part is kind of how generative can you be? How many ideas can you come up with?
Yeah, because when the bottleneck, doing anything in the world is ideas, execution, sort of outcome. When the execution is going to zero, when it's free, when it's as fast as possible, where's the bottleneck? It goes to ideas. And so you need to be very generative.
Thank you so much, Amjad.
Of course. Pleasure. Thank you.